Meanwhile, countries are banding together in a flurry of diplomacy to try to defuse those tensions over the war in the Middle East. Chinese President Xi Jinping telling Egypt's Prime Minister it was a top priority to end the war as soon as possible before it spirals further out of control. He said that two countries should work together to bring, quote, more stability to the region, and repeated China's support for a, quote, two-state solution to the crisis. The security situation in the Middle East will also be on the agenda when South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol makes a 5-day trip to Saudi Arabia and Qatar. He also intends to boost economic and security ties. The visit comes as Seoul pledges to provide humanitarian aid to civilian victims of the war. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has offered his country's solidarity with Israel in support of the country's rights to defend itself. Mr. Sunak is the latest Western ally attempting to negotiate the release of hostages taken by Hamas. In his speech, Mr. Sunak stressed the need to provide humanitarian aid to Gazans.
We in the UK have announced further aid that we're prepared to bring into the region, and we're keen to see that that gets to those who need it, to enable, as you say, when people have been asked to leave, to protect civilian life, which is the right thing to do. Where we can support them, we want to do that.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has demanded, quote, the unconditional release of all hostages taken into Gaza by Hamas. He said he was deeply moved after meeting with families of hostages in Tel Aviv. Mr. Scholz also mocked Russian President Vladimir Putin's comments about civilian casualties.
Ich will aber schon sagen, dass es mich mehr als empört, wenn man dann mitbekommt, dass gegenwärtig der russische Präsident überall davor warnt, dass es zivile Opfer von kriegerischen Auseinandersetzungen geben könnte. Zynischer als das geht es nun wirklich nicht.
Ministers from across the European Union are gathering in Luxembourg to discuss this ongoing crisis amid heightened concerns about spillover effects in the region. The ministers are not expected to make any specific decisions, but they will address how particular developments of the crisis could trigger violent acts within the bloc. The region is facing heightened tensions after a firebomb assault on a Berlin synagogue and deadly attacks in Belgium and France, suspected to have links to Islamic extremism. Some EU members are also calling for further change to the bloc's migration policy, saying they see the need to speed up the deportation of people who might pose a public danger. More, we go to Alex Kadir, live from Brussels. Alex, the EU is struggling to find common ground on how to approach the crisis. What are the main divisions?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's certainly two tracks here, and from the Interior Minister's perspective, there will be a focus on the safety of Jewish people in Europe. We've heard Gérald Darmanin, the French Interior Minister, speaking very clearly about that. We've seen increased security in Germany, in Belgium, and in France for locations of significance for the Jewish community. That's one aspect from the Interior Minister's meeting in Luxembourg today. But of course, the foreign policy aspect of the European Union and its response has also been quite tricky. We've seen the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen condemning Hamas's attacks in the strongest terms, visiting Israel, offering her solidarity, and in the initial stages not necessarily pointing out that any response should be done within the respect for international law, when the European Council President Charles Michel was absolutely stressing the importance of international law being respected, as was Josep Borrell, the EU's top diplomat who works underneath President von der Leyen. So a confused message, and that was sorted out when the leaders met a couple of days ago. Their position very clearly condemning in the strongest possible terms Hamas's attack and the indiscriminate terrorist attacks against Israel, but also stressing the importance of the provision of humanitarian aid to Gaza and tripling its aid money to Gaza. So a bit of a confused perspective from the European Union. Now, EU officials will tell you, well, point out another example in the world where 27 countries come together and agree on a common position. That is the nature of the European Union, but certainly a muddled picture so far, clarified by the leaders a couple of days ago.
Thanks to Alex Kadir, live for us there from Brussels.